Taking a look at some of the arguments being proffered out there in terms of what needs to be done to avert maybe a possible scarcity of petroleum products. But we also do know that at that time, when the Dr. Ibekachukwu, he did say, well, yes, the PPPRA came up with a template, and he then said, look, marketers can go import this product based on availability of forex. And so many thought this kind of complaints that they're giving now wouldn't arise at the time, because for some time they hadn't been getting forex at 197, which is why they said, look, we can't keep selling at that price. So they thought this was history. But now,
no,
it appears it's not.
No. What happened is that these are areas of transactions. Some of these things had accumulated before the introduction of even the new price. So at that time, there was still the official price regulation of 97 naira today. 97 naira per liter. At the time, some of these transactions were consummated.
Yeah, but
so it is an accumulated thing.
Yeah, but at the time, they were not getting forex for 197.
Yes.
What were they doing at the time before this floating of the currency eventually was announced?
No, some of them at that time. The bulk of the products were actually supplied by NNPC. Some of them on their own were able to source funds somehow from offshore or something to be able to bring in the products. And each time they saw this fund, they had to also repatriate or remit those funds after the sales, because there was still an official cap on the price of petroleum products at that time. So the expectation was that the moment they're able to sell, they'll be able to remit the funds at 197. But the important thing really is that there is need to work out some form of palliatives for this group of people. It may not be possible to begin to give forex at 197 at this time, given the condition of our reserves and the capacity of the CBN. But there has to be some creative ways to mitigate the shock, not just for the petroleum industry, oil and gas sector, but for all those who are affected by those mature obligations. Many of them are also in the manufacturing sector.
No, it's really sad we're back to this again, because, it boils down to trust. Is akin to what some people are saying, that sometimes some comments can really upset the market negatively or positively. And in this case, it looks like a negative move. Don't forget that it was only recently we were also told that with that jump in price, it was going to sort so many things out. And if we're coming back again to talk about the capping of the price of petroleum product, and we'll put that side by side with the forex gist, whether it is inability of some of them to access forex or not, what does this mean to our economy? Because for many Nigerians, getting to hear that headlines means doom for them, because they thought that at 145 we're out of danger.
No, you see, the issue, what we are dealing with are historical issues. Going forward, I'm optimistic that the system will stabilize. But the matter at hand now is the cash flow implications of having to service the mature obligation at 285 or 283. It's purely a historical thing. Because unless we are able to sort that out, the capacity of these businesses to continue to do business will be impaired. So as for the policy at the cap of 145 and so on, I'm sure things are stabilizing. We have seen the disappearance of queues, we have seen product availability and all of that. What we are talking about is the sustainability of those businesses as an enterprise, as a commercial concern. And unless we have some kind of support, maybe bailout, maybe mitigation of the current situation, the sustainability of those businesses will be at risk.
When we talk about support, sorry to cut you there, when we talk about support or bailout, what comes to mind is what you just also highlighted. We recall that we saw that in the aviation sector, and that was even just after we saw that bailout. Even in the United States, the government had to bail out some big companies and all that. Coming back to Nigeria, even though so many states will still say they don't want to use the word bailout, which so many will still say it is a bailout after all. If we put the state's inability of meeting its financial obligation side by side with what you just also suggested that we should do to so many of these big companies or individuals, or which ultimately still means business for them if they must stay in business. Do you think that a country can really take, how much can we suck up in helping maybe businesses and even state governments?
Well, there is a limit to which...
And you put that side by side with what is happening in the Niger Delta region with talking about the activities of the Avengers.
Yeah, there's a limit to which the government can continue to bail out either the government, state governments, or the private sector. Of course, there's a limit. The government hasn't got the resources. But within the limits of the resources available, here in this case, we are talking about a facility that we just restructure an existing debt. It's not a handout, as it were. It's that, okay, these companies have found themselves in this situation, not so much of their own making, but because of some policy shocks. Then you work out something within the framework of central bank intervention. This is not a question of just dipping hands into the treasury and doling out funds to the private sector. No. That there is, okay, within this framework of the central bank intervention, these people need a breathing space. Their cash flow needs to be improved. Therefore, you structure some financing for them to be able to give them a breather, to be able to continue their business. And looking beyond them, looking at the job implication, looking at the implication for product availability, and looking at the exposure of the banks to some of these institutions, because it's a major issue. Some banks are also under pressure because of their exposure to some of these oil and gas companies. So we have to look at this thing in totality, in a holistic manner, and look at the wider implications of allowing them to either go under or to continue under this stress.
But then you find out, if we keep coming up with these interventions, shouldn't we actually look at whether or not they're achieving their purpose? We've had several interventions before now. And so, I mean, one of the recent ones which the Senate is questioning, which you talked about, the implementation aspect of that principle. Will it always work? If we don't look at what has happened before, why didn't we get the kind of results we sought? And should we give another intervention without necessarily addressing the challenges we had before?
Well, I wouldn't agree with you that we didn't get the kind of results that we expected. There may be one or two cases in which those intervention funds were not appropriately utilized. But some of those companies have remained afloat today because of those intervention funds. Many of them will have gone under, if not for those intervention funds. The fact that some of them are still existing today, they owe it to the grace of that intervention.
If that were the case, then why is it that we do not have, no matter how hard they try, we have several businesses. I know Agric is different now. They say you can get a loan at 5% interest rate. You don't have that in several other sectors. And many even tell you, look, banks don't perform the core functions. And so that's why you get your loan at always a double-digit interest rate, which doesn't help any economy.
You see, the principle of intervention is to correct what you call market failure in a market economy. Ordinarily, in a market economy, you allow the forces of demand and supply to allocate resources. But when you discover that the principle of a market economy will not help some sectors, that is when you apply intervention. That is what happens to manufacturing.
Has it always helped manufacturing, or has it helped them in any way?
It has. It has. But the challenge with manufacturing is that there are some other structural issues that are also impeding productivity in that sector, that are impeding competitiveness in that sector. That is the issue.
You want to share some of that?
Basically, infrastructure, I must say. Because if you have a major infrastructure challenge, competitiveness will be an issue. So it's not as if throwing money at it will solve all the problem. It can only help your working capital, it can help your finances. But in terms of the fundamental factors affecting competitiveness, infrastructure is still a major issue.
Yeah, but
that is why many of them are still not competitive. That's why even some of them are even not able to pay some of these loans.